40% of buy-to-let landlords are planning to sell up, and it's mostly for one reason: the new EPC rules. You know, this colourful thing that apparently measures how energy efficient your home is, but it could effectively take your property from being compliant to illegal almost overnight. If you aren't ready, you could be looking at £10,000 in renovations on average. You could be facing up to £30,000 in fines. Today, I'm breaking down the new Warm Homes Plan, what you should know about it, the hidden exceptions that you need to know, and how I'm protecting my own portfolio from a market crash. If you're a landlord or looking to invest, stick around because you can't afford to not know this. So let's get into it. So yeah, this bad boy. So a lot of properties will have one measuring how efficient it is at keeping heat in. So this is rated from a scale of A to G, obviously A being the most efficient at keeping heat in, G the least. In the next few years, the government is pushing hard for all rental properties to have an EPC rating of C, which they say could cost the average landlord £10,000 to upgrade, which for an investor like me, that's potentially over 2 years of profits gone almost in an instant. Almost like the government is trying to push out small-time landlords. And when will this all begin? I'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, just consider the impacts this has. Even old Victorian houses, they tend to work great for buy-to-let, but the amount of money that you'd have to spend in them on upgrades just to get them to a grade C, even just on insulation. What's going to happen to properties that don't have a grade C at that stage? Could prices for them crash as demand drops? But equally, you could argue buy-to-let investors might buy them less, residential will buy them more, and that might not be as big a priority, so it might not have a huge impact on the actual prices they're selling for. The deadline you're waiting for, October 2030. So this is called the Warm Homes Plan, but does it apply to homeowners? Of course it doesn't, just rental properties. So before, the plan was to stagger this out, so existing tenancies had to have it done by one deadline and then new tenancies from another deadline, but now they've just set the one date in October of 2030. They're also making some huge changes to the current system because it's said to be outdated, quite flawed. What will happen is EPCs, they're going to be a lot more detailed, more calculated. So they're going to be generated using more data rather than just knocking on a wall, assuming it isn't insulated. Boiler's a little bit old, so we're going to give it a D. So they're going away with the simple A to G system. But the scary thing is they haven't told us what replaces that yet. But I'll tell you now, what do we know? So the new system is going to focus on a few areas. So the first one is the running cost indicator. So this will measure the annual cost of a property in terms of energy. So for lighting, for heating, for hot water, what are the annual costs of running that property? The other aspect is the fabric performance. So that's actually how well does the building itself retain heat. So we're talking insulation, we're talking windows, and just general how airtight the building is in keeping heat in. Next area is the heating system. So looking at the efficiency of the heating system, but also how environmentally friendly is it. That will weigh in on things. And finally, smart readiness. So the ability to use tools such as smart meters to optimize the amount of energy that you're actually using and work alongside your heating system to be more efficient. Generally speaking, there's going to be stronger quality control with EPCs and their assessors, so it's going to be much more regulated, maybe a little bit more reliable and consistency. They were reviewing how often you'd need an EPC, looking to bring that down from 10 years, but by the looks of things now, they're keeping that at 10 years. But obviously, with all the changes and the amount of data and work that's involved in EPC assessments, I wouldn't be surprised if they did get more expensive. So exemptions, the bit you've all been waiting for. There's a bit of a golden ticket exemption that could save you 10 grand. So I'll get to that in a second. First one is the cost cap exemption. So all that means is you've put in £10,000, including VAT, into the property. And even after that, it doesn't hit a grade C. In that case, you can register a 10-year exemption. And during that time, obviously, you can see what you want to do with it, whether that's upgrading it further or whether that is selling it on. The other aspect of it being, if you've done all recommended, cost-effective, technically feasible and realistic options up to £10,000 and it still hasn't hit a grade C, then the exemption can still apply, but that is, of course, down to your own research. Next exemption is for lower value properties. So they can register for an exemption where the cap is 10% of the property's value. So if you've got a 60 grand property, the cap is actually 6,000. This is obviously massively beneficial in the north. You've got third-party consent exemptions. So as an example, for flats, if you need consent from a freeholder, mortgage company, planning authority, or a tenant and they refuse, the property can be registered as exempt for 5 years. Property devaluation. So if a RIC surveyor has a look at the property, and by you making the EPC improvements, it actually reduces the value of the property by more than 5%. A 10-year exemption can also apply. So this may be for your cottages with a very nice stone wall finish, as an example. From October 2025, they are also counting costs. So any money you spend on EPC improvements is counting towards some of these caps, but obviously keep some evidence. There's a 6-month exemption for new landlords to get up to code, 10-year exemption where an old property where the changes might impact the structure or the fabric, a solid wall insulation sort of exemption. So if the only requirement to reach C is wall insulation and the landlord chooses not to install it due to worries about damp, structural issues, then a 10-year exemption can be applied. So here's the golden ticket I've been promised you. It's called grandfathering. If your property holds an EPC of C on or before the 1st of October 2029, it is considered compliant until the actual EPC expires. So if you had it in 2029, an EPC of C, you wouldn't have to get one under the new system, the tighter system, until 2039. So there's your golden ticket. Off you go, Charlie. So what am I doing with my portfolio? So first, I'm buying properties with a C rating or a clear route to get them to a C. If I am buying something with an EPC of D, I know I've got a clear game plan in order to get it to a C, or I'm going to buy it with some wiggle room in the purchase price to make sure I can get it up to standard. Of course, I'll be reviewing my portfolio, and anything that isn't compliant, it's about getting an EPC assessor out to have a look at the property and give their opinion on what I can do in order to get them to a C or above. They can tell you what's needed to get it up to standard, what exemptions might work out well for you. In some cases, it might be worth just updating your EPC early to get the most out of it. Underprepared landlords are still going to be buying, and I'd say it's not too soon to sell, but if you wait till 28, 29 when this is all more recent, then you may have to take a hit in terms of the house price rather than if you action things sooner. Equally, if you wait until then, it might not be this bad, but at that point, contractors could get a lot more booked up. Supplies could start running out of stock, cost of insulation going up. All of this could mean you're rushed, you're stressed, you're spending more, so that's why it is better to be prepared. I do understand the need to help our planet, provide more affordable places to live, but what do you think? Is this just a little bit of a push at landlords? Bearing in mind it only applies to rental properties, it doesn't actually apply to residential. We don't know exactly how this will work, but it's definitely coming. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'll keep you posted on any updates to do with this. I'll be documenting every single step of how I handle these changes, updating you on my buy-to-let journey, my property portfolio, just general videos on personal finance as well. So if you want to follow along, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to watch this one next. I think you're really going to enjoy it. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.